Okay, so today I have quite a lot of things to go through. So if by any chance I look like lost, it's because I'm trying to make sure that we're covering all the bases here. But I have a lot between the content and there is the research that I need to be collecting information, and we're gonna have to go through the project details. So again, here and there I may have a pause just to check to make sure that we are doing what we need to do today. Okay? Great. So today, our week 10. So in our week 10, we're going to be talking about security. Security in regards to our MVC applications. Okay? We're going to be talking about that. That will be the majority of what we're going to be doing today. But we'll also be discussing, planning, organizing the project that we have to put together. Okay? So there will be quite a few things there. I would like to see the groups formed right away. Everybody that is in this room right now should leave here today knowing which group they will belong to. So we're going to be setting aside some time for that. We're going to be picking which feature each group will be developing. So a lot going on here as well. So, and again, there will be a survey about the research that I mentioned before. But as we go through the night, we'll get that done. And we're going to do some exercise as well about the security. We also, depending on time, we will be addressing the questions that have been posted too. Okay? So a lot of moving parts today. But let's get them moving. Okay, so initially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a brief recap of what you were supposed to go through on parts 1 through 6 of the videos. I'm just going to brush through them in a way, recap. Maybe if you have questions at this point, ask them. But then after a quick recap of what you should have been gone through, we're going to jump into further discussions about security. I'll be doing some demonstrations here. Okay, so again, today about security. Security of our applications. Of not all users should be able to do everything in our applications. We should have security measurements in place so that an unauthorized user should not be able to use certain features of our application. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how we can secure actions and controllers. Okay, how we can make sure that in an action level or in a controller level, it's inaccessible to logged in users, to users that are authorized. We're going to allow a user to log in to the application. Okay, so you're going to be creating login interface for that. Okay, so that's what we'll be doing today, and we started that. So today is covered on chapter 12. There is a lot as well on chapter 28 further down the book. That will be, it's also about security, but that will be covered in 2 weeks. So next week is about deployment, and then the week after is about identity framework, which is part of what you're going to start today. We're going to continue in 2 weeks. Today is really a very basic introduction to security on MVC. We're not going to be dealing with things like security roles, like one person is an administrator, another person is a manager, another person is an editor. We're not going to be dealing with different levels of users. We're just going to say the user has access or not, yes or no. If yes, they can do it. If no, they cannot. So it will be that simple today. You have the playlist as well. This PowerPoint is already uploaded on Centennial. The link is active there, so you can refer to the videos whenever necessary. And once again, we are back to our MVC diagram. Today, again, we're going to be touching, aside from router, we're going to be using the default routing mechanism. Actually, we're going to use the mechanism that is already defined on Sports Store. We're going to be dealing with controllers, with views, with models. We're going to be dealing with all those different elements as we progress through the night, okay, through the evening. First part here in this was part of the videos that you have gone through. The first part was to create the identity context. Remember what a context is? A context is your bridge to the database, okay? So in our security example, we are creating a separate database to be able to host, to be able to store user information. Who has access to what are the users of the system. Okay, so we have a separate database. We have, and during that first part that you have gone through, you have created a context called what? A DB context called what? What was the name of the database context? App identity DB context, wasn't it? So that was the one. So first, you have created the bridge between the application and the database. Okay, so this is very similar to the original DB context that you have created to be able to interact with the database. Now, again, we are dealing with a separate database. So that separate database, it will have its own address, its own context. So this new context here, which can be named anything you want, but it has to inherit from identity database. Identity database because we are using the identity framework provided by .NET Core, okay? So a lot of things that you're going to see here are very similar to what you have already applied in the original DB context. But this time around, it's more specific towards identity. Identity means identifying which user is using the system, which user is loading the pages, which user is logging in the system, okay? But if you compare this with the original DB context, they are very similar. Of course, changing here the fact that we are now inheriting from identity DB context. So again, app identity DB context is the link between the application, it's the bridge, okay? The context is the bridge between the application and the database, where the information is stored. It's via this class, this object here, that you're going to be able to retrieve user information from the database. We're going to be able to update user information, create new users as well, okay? Then, as I said, we have a new database. So we go back to which file is that one that has a configuration? App settings.json, okay? So originally you had just this one here, data, sports store products, connection string. We added this one for the sports store identity. And then here's the address of that new database. The basic difference here is the database name. You have identity here, we have sports store here. So again, the second database is only used to store user information. Could we have used the same database? We could. We could have used the same database. I think the author just wanted to show some flexibility and show the fact that you can connect to multiple databases within the same application, okay? But you can definitely use the same database to store the identity information, okay? So, with the context to the database, with the connection string telling me the address of the identity database, we have to configure the services in our, where is that located? Where is this? Where is the configure services?
Application setup.
The name of the class. What is the name of the class? That we have this method here. The startup. So the startup class. So again, so we go back to the startup class and we add our new DB context. Very similar to what we had there for the sports store database. So we have this line here. Now, we also have this second line here, which we are adding another service to our application. And remember that an MVC application or in a .NET Core application, we add services to our application that we want to use. We add MVC, we add authentication, we add the service that we want to use, and we configure them. So here, I'm saying that I want to add identity, identification, authorization to this application. This is the database. So this is telling me where the information is stored, this line here. Okay, the information is stored in this configuration line. So you can get access to the database via the configuration. See, again, configuration is reading this connection string here. Okay? And then we are creating the link to the identity database. This is an important step, but not the only one. We have to use this part here to say that we want to use identity information in our application. And amongst other things, we are saying use identity, and here is the context that you should check for the identity information. See, app identity DB context, it's using the same one that is used here. So we are adding the service, the identity service, and we are saying use this DB context to retrieve information from that location. Okay? Again, a few methods here. Add default token providers. This is about, if I'm not mistaken, about password protection. It's related to password. It's related to security around password. We're gonna see quite a lot of things about passwords. You can do quite a few things in regards to password. You can say what is the minimum size, how many characters it must have, how many numbers, how many letters. Okay, so again, this line, we create the link to the database, and this one here we say, I want to use identity, and this is where you're going to be getting the identity data from. We also have here identity user and identity role. Identity user is, because here's the thing, when we use identity in our MVC application, it provides, the framework provides to us as well a class that has properties around a user. This is the class, identity user. Now, this identity user, it has a limited number of properties. It has name, username, email, and a few other properties there. But what if in our application, our users, they have more information that we require? Well, if we have more information, we can create our own user class that inherits from this one here, but has additional properties. And then we can potentially use our new user instead of the identity user here to describe, to determine the user class used in our application. So, but for the sake of this example, at this level that we're going to be using identity user as our main class to deal with users. And identity role, we're not going to talk about that today. This will be kept until we talk about identity framework in 2 weeks. But this is the class that we're going to be able to say, okay, our application has an admin level, has a manager level, has a role. So in systems, what you have usually is you have users. Each person is a user, but users, they are grouped together into roles. So a group of users, they may have admin level access. Another group of users, they may have another type of access, a very low basic type of access. So this is where you're going to be able to do that, okay? Security will be important for the project, and we're going to be discussing about that, but what is required in the project is very basic in relation to security, and I'll be covering that once we get there, okay? I have Padlet open here, so again, feel free to, okay. Sir, can you post the Nearpod code because I do not have student. Okay, so if you don't have the ticket number, that's fine. Just answer the quiz on Nearpod and maybe come up with a number above 40 and then use that same number in the other places as well. So, okay, so yeah. Oh, the Nearpod codes. Actually, if you're talking about the quiz, you can find the code. You can find the link right here. If you go to Contents, and if you go to week 10, here is the quiz. The quiz link. It's right here. So you don't need the code. You just need to click this link. Okay. Again, under week 10, just click this link, and you can go to the quiz there. Okay. Okay. Anything comes to mind? Any questions? Again, I don't like to show too much code in a PowerPoint, but I just want to briefly review what you should have gone through already, quickly. Now, on top of that, not only we need to add those 2 lines to the configure services in the startup class, but we also need to add use authentication to the configure methods. Without that, it won't work. You won't be able to use users in your application. So you have to add use authentication. That's the service that gets used to perform authentication in our application. Without that, it won't work. Sometimes we are trying to make it work and you are not able to log in, and you're going to see that you might be missing this line of code. Okay, from the configure method under startup class. Okay, with that done, you can run the migration scripts. Actually, you can first create, then you can run. Okay? Now, again, you may want to have a note of that somewhere, and of course, you can download the PowerPoint, the PDF, and then you can keep that. But keep that handy, because you may see that as you develop your projects, you may need to run your scripts many times. So far, initially, we did need to do this part here. I don't know if you recall, but we only needed to do this part, to call this part. Because before, we just had one database. Now we have 2 databases. We are dealing with 2 DB contexts. So now, if we try to run just this in our application, it's going to ask, which context are you talking about? Are you talking about the application, the original context for the database of products, or are you talking about the app identity DB context? So after we have 2 contexts, we have to add in our command line the property or the parameter that says -- context, and then I have to say what is the context that I'm running this command against, okay? The same applies to creating the migration scripts as well as to applying and creating the database. So we have this -- context. Does that make sense? Again, if you just say up until here and you don't say the context, it doesn't know which context you want to run, you want to create, and you want to apply. Here you create, here you apply. Okay? Those commands, they are run in the command line. However, there is an alternative. Let's say that you don't want to go through the command line. Anyone knows what is the alternative to use the command line to run those?
I don't remember, but you can do it actually in Visual Studio.
Exactly. So you can do that inside Visual Studio. You don't need to go outside. So I'm going to give you another alternative here. So you can use these two commands in what it's called the Package Manager console. I will demonstrate this. Okay? So I have it here loaded. I think this is up to step 6 or 7. Now, if this is closed, what you can do is you can go to View, Other Windows, and then Package Manager Console. This is a command line as well. This is not the same command line, not exactly the same command line as you have here, CMD, but it's a similar one. However, the command is it has a slightly different syntax. Don't want to confuse you, but I just want to give you an alternative. So add migration initial is the equivalent of the first one, and update database is the equivalent of the second one. So you can say something like this. I'm just going to copy that in the command line and in the Package Manager console, as you can see here. Let me paste that, and let's see. Well, I think that there is already one called, So I have run this before, so I can give it another name, initial 2. Most likely, there's nothing new to be added, but it did run, okay? Now, if the database was not created, and I'm going to make sure that I will delete it so you can see it being created. See here, I have the two databases. I have Sports Store and I have Identity. I'm going to get rid of Identity. I'm going to keep Sports Store. So I'm going to use the second one to run the migration scripts. So update, and then with that, the same type of messages, errors, warnings that would be given to you from the command line, it's given here as well. You just have to wait. It's just running through the scripts. So you can have a look and see if there is any red stuff. This is from the previous one that we had a problem. And then if I refresh the database, I see my identity database created with the tables inside of it. Here are the tables. Those are the tables necessary to store users, roles, logins. Again, all the identity information, it's all stored in those tables. Okay? So you have the option of using one or the other one. It might be more convenient to use this one. I start to get used to use this one because you can use that right within SQL Server, Visual Studio, and you don't have to go to command line.
So when will be using the updates instead of the add migration?
So updates. So add migration is when you either create your models in the context for the first time, and you want to create the scripts to create the database. So the first one creates the scripts. The second one applies the scripts. It runs the script to create the database, to create the tables inside. Okay? A minor difference with the original database is because the seed data, if you look at the seed data, it has this line here. This line takes care of running the scripts against the database. So in the first database, we don't need to do this update because this line is doing that for us. But on both of them, we need to do this one here. We need to create them. When we make changes to the model, we need to run the migrations again because it needs to recreate the scripts with the new, either you modify the model or you added a new model, which becomes a new table. Okay?
So you have to delete it then.
You don't have to delete. Actually, when you add, let's say you run it initially, it creates the database, create tables there. Let's say that you make a change. You can just add a second and you can rename. Instead of initial, you can put whatever name you want, but you have to put a name, and it cannot be a name that has been used before. Otherwise, you're going to have a message that says this script, this migration already exists. But any change you do, you can run this one here. It will create the scripts that will perform the change. So it won't delete the database. It will, after you run this, it will just make the adjustments that are the difference between the first script and the second script. It doesn't drop everything. It just applies the new changes. Again, as you get through your your assignment 3, your project, and you need to recreate your database, again, you'll get more used to this process. If you just see theoretically like that, again, it doesn't sink in. It sinks when you are practicing this, and you're going to have plenty of opportunities to practice this as well. Okay. Let's see here if there's anything. Okay. Okay. Let's have a look what else we have. Okay, and I think that's last part. Yes. Last part here, you have created another seed data, a seed data for identity. Here's the thing. If in your system, if you have an interface that creates users, and this interface that allows you to create user is protected, how can you create your first user? So your system needs to have an initial user so you can use it to be able to log in and then be able to create new users from there. But if your system doesn't have any users, you cannot log in to use the protected part of the system. That's the reason why we have an identity seed data. What's the idea of the seed data from the original database? What is a seed data? Yes, to have some data in the store already, the original. Here, we are making sure that we create some users already, or a user. That's what this is creating. We are using private constants here just to make it more readable. There's no particular need for that, but it's just to make it more readable. We are naming our user as admin, our password, that's the password, and we are creating an ensure populated method here. Want to mention a few things here. When a method inside when we use a method that is an asynchronous method, again, you saw that a little bit when we were dealing with partial views, okay? But inside of a method, if we are using an asynchronous method, we have to use the keyword await. But not only that, our method has to be flagged as async as well. If we try to use an await keyword inside a method that does not have async, it's going to give an error. So this await goes together with async. Await, just to mention that I have mentioned previously, await is when you launch these methods in memory, in a thread, and the code, the application releases resources for the application to do other things. When that thing, which is this method here, is done, it comes back here and it continues. Okay? So it's just a more efficient way to work with multi-threading applications. Okay? It doesn't block the rest of the application. It allows the rest of the application to progress while it waits for that. Now, this next line will only get executed when this one returns back. Okay? So it's not that, runs this and keeps going. No, it doesn't keep going here in the same method. But it releases resources for the parts of the application to be running as well. It doesn't block the resources here. But it keeps waiting inside this method. It's waiting there. When it comes back, that's the reason why we have to use async here. So again, there's a combo here. Use await with asynchronous methods. Usually asynchronous methods, they have the async keyword on it. It does have to, but usually you're going to see that. And again, you can only use the await keyword inside an async method, okay? Because this method as well becomes asynchronous too, okay? Not that you need to know all of those details, because you're going to be pretty much just using them. But let's have a look at this code, what this is doing. So we are declaring. So user manager, this class here, I'm saying that I'm going to use, this is the class that manages users. I'm using the identity user, and I'm going to use this guy here to perform create user, update user, delete a user, find a user. Okay? That's the user manager. The user manager will be the one that's, see what it's doing here. It's trying to find the admin user. It sets to admin. So I'm declaring a user of type identity user. If the user does not exist, what it's doing here? It's create the user. If it exists, it doesn't do anything. It goes straight away. So even though we will be calling this identity seed data dot ensure populated every time the application runs, but it will only create the user once. Once it's created, every time that this runs, user will not be null. This will not run again. We just create the user once. This is almost the equivalent. If you recall the seed data, checking if there's data in the database. We are checking if the admin user had already been created. We are doing this. Find by ID. We are trying to find this admin user. If we find, we don't create it again. It's just for that. If we don't find, we declare a new user with this name. And our user manager that we declared here, we use to create a new user. We give it a name, and we give it a password. It's that simple. In our class in 2 weeks, we're going to be expanding this a little bit more to be able to create roles as well. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. So this is up to this point. This is what steps 1 to 6 we're covering, okay? What I want to do next, I want to start applying security to controllers, to actions as well, okay? So that's what I'll be demonstrating now via Visual Studio. Okay, so the first step that I'm gonna be performing is to pick which controllers and which actions I'm going to flag as secured actions, secured controllers, okay? So for the sake of our example here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna secure list, mark shipped, and admin controllers. So we're gonna secure them. So far, up to this point, we have a user creating the database, and we are now able to connect to this identity database. Now, what we do now with that is we specify what aspects of my application do I want to secure, which controllers and which actions. We don't necessarily secure views directly, but we secure views by securing the actions that call that view. So again, we don't say that someone doesn't have access to that view. We talk about the action in the control itself. So let me open Visual Studio here, and let's try this. So let's go to the order controller. Actually, let me run this first. Okay, so let's give it a try on this one here. So we have order controller. Order controller has a list here. Well, we don't have an order yet. So how about we create an order? Well, let's just try this thing here. So order / list. That list. I think this is already secure. Let me see one thing here. Yeah, this is already secure. Let me close this one. I've opened the wrong version here. I'm going to open exactly the code as of part 6. So yeah, that's fine. So let me run this one here. Okay, so I'm just gonna go there again. So order / list. Okay, so there's no orders because I didn't order anything yet. So I'm just gonna create an order here. I'm gonna add 2 cards. I'm gonna go checkout, and okay, and I'm gonna complete the order. That's it. So now if I refresh the order list, I should be able to see a new order here. Now, this list is being filtered by order not shipped yet, okay? But as you saw, I was able to load order / list without any problems. But if this is an interface supposed to be used by administrators, this should be protected. So how do I protect this interface? How do I lock this down just to make it available to authorized users? Well, we can go to the controller. Again, we have a look at the controller order, the list action, and we're gonna secure that. So here's the list. I'm calling the repository, I'm calling the orders, and I'm saying where order is not shipped. Shipped is a Boolean, and I'm saying not shipped. So show me the not shipped ones. How do I control access to this particular view here? Well, I just add the annotation. Actually, let me see here. It's the authorize. It's because we don't have the namespace yet here. So we're gonna add the namespace, annotations, come on. So we add the namespace Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.authorization, authorization, not annotation. Here is, and just by doing that, if I run this again, and I try order list, now I can no longer access that. And you see, look at the top there. It's doing something automatically for us. It's calling account login. And remember that on MVC, a lot of things are done by convention. So by convention, the application is expecting that we have created an account. What is account there? Just by the look of this URL. Just by the look of it, what is account there?
Account is a view.
Let's think a little bit more. Controller. So account is a controller. Login, what is login? Action. The action calls the view. But here in the URL, we have the controller and we have the action here. So by default, because that's the list now is restricted to authorized users only, it will redirect me to an account login, expecting that in this place, I will be able to load a form that asks for name and password. Okay? But we don't have that created yet. It's expecting that, but we have not created it yet because, again, we didn't. That's it. Now, let's finish setting this up. So I listed here that we should lock down list action and mark shipped. So let's do the same thing here for the mark shipped button. Okay? So I'm locking down both of them, the list and the clicking the button. Okay? Now, the other thing that I can lock down, so we can lock down an action. This is an action level. However, we can also lock down an entire controller at once. If we know that the entire controller should be blocked, we can do the same flag. And in our case, it's suggestion to do to lock down admin. So we can lock down admin completely right here. We can just say in the controller definition, I can say authorize as well. And if this gives me a hard time, it will add there the namespace, and it should be good here. So again, I can lock down in an action level, or I can lock down an entire controller here. Okay? Next steps that we're going to do, we're going to be creating our login interface, where we will be able to type in username and passwords, and now we're going to be able to see those lockdown controllers, the lockdown actions as well. Okay? Let's go for 5 minutes, quick 5 minutes, and we come back, we will deal with that.
many students can
Yep.
be in a group for?
From 3 to 4, three or four people.
So maximum is 4.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna have time today that we're gonna talk about that, and we're gonna have time to organize ourselves in groups and start from there. Okay. There'll be time for that. Yes, it's self-organized.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's nice. I thought to it's the first gym I took. Snow was
Right.
the professors told me it's Canadian workplaces. Yeah, I had this course with that.
Okay, so let's carry on here in our build process. So we have stopped right. So we have done, we have secured. Now we're going to start to create our interface to be able to log in. So yes, we blocked, but how can we now allow the user to log in to the system? Well, that's what we're going to be doing next. So as you saw, the application is expecting that we have a controller called admin and that we have an action called login. So let's get them going. Let's get them created. Okay? So we're going to be creating right now, one, the account controller with two actions. One is to load the login. Two is to, when we post the login information, which information are we going to be posting? We're going to be posting the username and the password. So we would be able to log into the system, okay? So let's go to our application. Under controllers, let's add a new controller. Sorry. I like to go and edit from here, add new item. And then from here I add as a class. So I'm going to call account controller.
Has to be under name account.
It has to. Now, there are ways that you can customize that, but for us to get started, let's accommodate what MVC is expecting us to do by default, okay? But all of that can be customized. The controller, I don't want it to be called login. I want it to call log me in. It can be done. But by default, that's the structure. Controller is called account, and the action is called login. Okay.
Why it shouldn't be provided by the framework?
Why it should?
Shouldn't. Like we should have provided with the framework since they already anticipated that we need to have.
But remember that we are using a blank template. So I think that there are templates that this already gets created. So we are doing everything from scratch, okay? So account controller, and again, you know this already inside and out. Controller, inherits from controller. We have to add the namespace up there, come on. And then we're gonna create our public. First one here, because it is a view that we want to return, so I'm gonna return view result. And I'm gonna call this login. And I'm just gonna return a view. Now again, nothing different here from what you are already used to do, you know? So with the login, I'm just gonna jump straight into create our view as well. I'm not gonna do anything else at this point. I'm just gonna create our view. Now, our view, where exactly are we creating this view? Any folder in particular?
Are we going to make an account folder?
We're going to make an account folder, so yeah. So views, account, folder, and then we're going to create a new item. I'm going to call this is a razor view. This is login. And I'm going to add. So we have our login over there. Just for the sake of test, let's have a look here. I'm just going to write test. I'm going to say h1. Let's see if this is calling. Because we create the controller, we created the action, we create the view. So now, even though we don't have yet a form, but if we try to access a protected place, a protected action, it should bring this up to us. Let's have a look at there. So /order /list. Okay, so we have it. Okay. Again, it's using the same layout. We're gonna be changing that, but it's using the same original layout that is being used right here from the view start. If I want to use a more admin-driven layout, I can just set the layout there. I can say view bag. This is the login. And I'm using the admin layout. And if I refresh this, we should be able to see a slightly different layout. Okay? So login at the top, and we have our test here. Okay, but we're not going to be using this. For now, and I'm doing this in a way different from the book. I'm using a more, I'm going to develop this in a way, and then later we're going to modify it to make it a little bit more sophisticated. But for now, we're not going to be linking this view to any model. I'm not going to link to any model, okay? But we have to ask for two things. We have to ask for the name, and we have to ask for the password. So keeping in mind that we're going to be doing a very basic interface here, what should we do next here?
The login field.
Yeah, but before we create the fields themselves, they have to be inside of what? A form. They have to be inside a form, okay? So we have a form here, which will have an action. I'm gonna use the login action as well, but this time around, we're gonna be using a posts, and here we're gonna have three elements. You know, I'll keep it very basic for now. What are the three key elements that we're gonna have inside this form? First one, username. Second one, password. Third one, a button. Now, login, sign in, anything like that. Okay. So again, to collect the information, and a button to submit the information. Okay. Again, at this point, I'm not going to care about the visual part. We're going to beautify this later by copying some CSS styles. But I just wanted to work and keep it very simple so hopefully we can follow along a little bit easily. Okay, so we're going to have something like this. We're going to say login. Okay, so name. And I'm going to say input. Okay, should I be able to use ASP4 here? Because I don't have a model. So again, ASP4 is supposed to bring properties from the model. I don't have a model here, so I'm not going to be using that. Okay, but I do need to give it a name. So I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to say, well, I'm going to say name here. I'm just going to break the line here, and I'm going to say password. And I'm going to add another input, which I'm going to call password. And finally, here, I'm going to create a button. Type will be a submit, and it will be called, let's say, login. Very simple. Again, I'm just making it bare bones so we don't overcomplicate with a lot of markup here at this point. Then what's next? What are we doing next? let's ask ourselves, what, based on what we have just put together, what are we missing? Not here, but what is the next natural step here?
To create an action.
To create the action. What is the name of the action? Login. Login.
But it's a
But it's a post this time around, okay? Okay, so let's go back to our account controller. We're gonna say public. This time around, let's do something slightly different here. This time around, let's call this iActionResult. Let's call this iActionResult. And I'll explain what is the difference in a second. Let's call this login. And let's flag this one here as what? HTTP post. Okay, but it's complaining about something here. It's saying that, well, you have something already called login. Based on what we put together in our login form, what else are we missing here? What is it that we're missing here?
Take an input.
We are
parameter.
missing some parameters here. What are the parameters to this method? Both fields. So you're going to be using as parameters name and password, because they are input fields. So you're going to say string name. Again, it has to match the spelling, but not necessarily the lowercase uppercase. And then string password. Okay. Great. Now, let me just follow through piece of code as I have already here, and I'm gonna do some copying, and I'm gonna explain as I go along here. So let's go to the controllers, to the account controller. Okay. This is slightly different, but I'll explain why in a second. Okay, so as in any form, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to validate if this form is valid or not. So if model state dot is valid, if it's valid, then, and by valid, it really means that did we put a username, did we put a name, did we put a password? But we are not making them required yet, so it will most likely be valid. So if it's valid, then, actually let me change one thing here. I'm just changing the way that the code gets displayed so it doesn't break the line automatically. Okay, so we have to adjust a few things here. The first one is that we have to try to find the user. So we're going to have to use a user manager. Remember, we have used user manager in our seed. Let's have a look there again. So if you go to models, if you go to identity seeds, we have used a user manager in identity seeds to see if the admin user has been created. We have done that here. So we're going to have to use the same thing here as well. But identity user, it needs to have a namespace. So let's add that there at the top. So we have identity namespace. Now, let's start to fix a few things here. So the first one is user manager. It's not present here. I don't have user manager here, but I have to get a user manager. The way you're going to get this user manager is via some dependency injection here, we're going to have to create a constructor of this controller. So you're going to have to say public account controller. We're going to have some parameters here, but I'm just going to call it for now. Now, we need to declare this guy here. As usual, remember that when we are dealing with constructors and controllers, and we need dependency injection, we have to pass the objects via parameters in the constructor of that class. So we're going to declare a private user manager, similar to what you have on the identity seed here. We're going to have to declare, and I'm going to just use this to get the declaration there. We're going to declare a private user manager. Now, I'm declaring it here, but I'm going to be using the account controller constructor to give me a real object of this type here. So I'm going to say, in our account controller, I'm just going to say user manager, and I'm going to call this, I'm just going to keep it consistent. I'm going to call the same thing here, user MSG, and I'm going to say user manager receives this one here. Who's provided this to us? Who's giving this user manager to us? MVC. MVC is doing that for us. Whenever this controller here gets created, MVC detects that, oh, it's using a user manager identity. Great, okay. And then it will provide us a real object of this type, which we set to our private user manager. When we do that, now our user manager is available. We still have a problem here to deal with, but our user manager is available here. Okay, so user manager is there. Now, look at what it's complaining. Remember, I mentioned, yes, exactly. So we have to call a sync, but because we are, let me just see here. Because we are dealing with an action, not only we have to say async here, but this action, let me see what is this. Oh, yeah. It's complaining that there's no return. That's fine. That's okay for now. So not only this has to be an async, but because we are dealing with an action, actually this becomes a little bit more complicated, and we have to use something that is called a task. Task, and it has a variable type inside. In our case, it will return an iAction result, which again, it's another aspect that I'm going to explain in a second. But here, we have to use a task because we are using inside with an action. See, before we have used in the identity seeds, this is not an action. This is just a regular method. However, when we are dealing with actions, which are methods inside controllers, we need to use this. We need to declare our action as a task, and it returns the type that is inside. So again, keep in mind the syntax here. Whenever we are dealing with a wait and a sync within the context of an action. Okay, so we have find. Okay, find by name asynchronous. So the name is this parameter. I'm going to set it here. I'm trying to find. Then what? Let's see what else we have here. Okay, great. So if the user is found, which is this test here, if the user gets found, then we need to validate the password. So first, we try to make sure that the user is valid, the user exists. Then we check if the password is the correct one. That's the next step that we're going to be doing now. We're going to still be using, actually going to be using another method here, another class here. But that's okay. Okay, so let me just mention this. User manager is available to allow us to create new users, to update users, to find users. However, when we are dealing with sign-in, with login, this guy here is not the one that manages the actual sign-in to the system. It's not the one that manages the passwords. It's not the one that validates the password. Password does not deal with this class. It deals with the sign-in class. It deals with a different class. Why is that broken down like that? I don't know, but it's just the way it is. So the user manager deals with creating, updating, deleting users, finding users. And the sign-in manager deals with being able to log in, being able to validate the password. So you're going to have to use another manager here. This time around, it's not user manager, it's the sign-in manager. It's, again, another object that we're going to be using in our account controller, okay? So, we're going to declare another private here. Sign-in manager. It uses the same user. And we're going to call this sign-in manager, but with lowercase s. So again, user manager, create, update, delete, and find user. Sign-in manager, be able to log in, be able to log out, be able to validate passwords. They work, I would say, in combination, but they are separate classes. They are separate objects. Now, the same thing that I did with user manager here, by using dependency injection, I'm going to do with the sign-in manager. I'm going to say sign-in manager, and I'm going to call this one mgr. And I'm going to say sign-in manager, which is our private, equals to this one here. Now, with that done, I can use sign-in manager to validate the password. And this is yet another await. So let's just put this here. So if the user is not null, we do a second test. We perform a second test here. What is the second test? Well, we're going to check now the password. We're going to say sign-in manager.passwords sign-in async. I gave the user, which is this guy here, the password, and let me see what those other properties are. Oh, it's persistent. Attempts to sign in, specifically user personal combination. Okay. Yeah, it's just about cookies, and the next one is about let's see here. Yeah, if in case if the user tries, it fails, and then the account gets locked out. We don't want that. So again, keep both of them false. But what we are doing here is we are testing if the password succeeded. This returns a true or false. true if it succeeded, false if not. If everything went fine, what we're going to do here is a redirect. Now, our redirect, we're gonna do something way simpler here. We're going to say just return redirect, where we're going to redirect back to order / list. Again, let's make this simple for now. Now, here's the thing. There is the case that if this model is invalid, we're going to have an else here. And we're just going to load, we're going to return the same view. That's okay. Have an else. Actually, we don't even need to have an else, but that's fine here. Okay, so let's just recap this. Well, we have an else here that we didn't address. Well, you know what? When we have a return, the code would stop right here. So I can just do something like this, actually. In case it doesn't go inside, it should just return to the original view. So this line here, which view will this load again? If I say this? Login again. So it will call login again. Okay? So let's leave this like this for now. And let's see how this behaves. Quick recap. We check if the model is valid. If it's valid, we get the user. We check if the user exists. If it does exist, if it exists, we check the password. If the password is okay, we send it back. See, this method here performs the login. And then we can just redirect back to where the user wanted to go anyway, which was /order /list. Let's see this in action. Okay, so let's give this a try. Order list. Okay, so we have our basic interface here. Let's see the passwords that has been created with the seed. So we have admin and we have secret here. So let's say admin, secret, login. Now it went back and we're now logged in. Okay? Now, what I'm not sure, well, first of all, is that we don't have a logout. So it won't be easy to log out anymore here. But let me see. Let me just check here. So we have the login. We're going to do the logout later. We have the basic form. Okay, so we created the get, we created the post, we created the login, we've created the view. Okay. Here's what I would like to show you next. Again, any questions so far? This is not that straightforward, not that simple. Again, I spoke a lot here, so I would expect some questions. Okay, so here's what I want to demonstrate. How can we do this part here a little bit different? And that's where I mentioned this a few times, but never very specific like what I'm going to mention today. There is something called view model. When you hear the word model, what comes to mind? What is a model in our in our context. For instance, in our store, what is the most used model from our store? Products. So we associate usually models with something called domain model. Domain, what is the domain? Domain is the store. The e-commerce store is a domain. So we have product, we have order, we have classes that are related to that business. However, there might be classes that we use to support our application. Here, I'm going to demonstrate one of those, which are called view models. View models are models, classes, but they are used just because we have some more complicated views that we want to transfer information, not like this, but like an object. So let's say that I want to create a login model that has a name and a password. So instead of using, by the way, I mean, this works just fine. I'm just going to show another way that you could handle this name and password by using a view model. Okay? So my new class will have a name and a password. And now our login view will be linked to this new model that we're going to put in place. Okay? Let me show you this. Which one is which? Okay, so this is the one. So, again, because this has been building for a while, we already have a view models folder under models. It doesn't have to be inside this folder, but it's created just to organize things a little bit better, okay? So we're going to create a new class called, I think it's login model. Let me just confirm here. Just want to keep the name consistent. Yes. So we're going to create a new class here called new item class. I'm going to call this login model. Our login model will have two properties. I'm going to have a public string name and a password. Public string password okay, I'm just going to keep both of them. Now here's what we could do. We could go to our login and we could say, hey, you know what? Link this login view to our new model. So do something like this. Login model. Now, because I have a login model attached to this view, I can use a ASP for equals to, and then I can say name. I no longer need to say name here. I can do the same thing here for password. I can say ASP-4 password, and we have the submit button. With this change, what else do I need to change now? If I go to the controller, so I'm going to go back to the controller, and instead of using string name and password, I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to say login model. Of course, it does not have the namespace, so I have to add there. Oh, view model, yes. So login model, I'm going to say login model. And now, instead of just passing directly name, I'm going to say login model dot name and login model dot password. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a model view. This is a model that it doesn't have any other purpose other than transferring data between the controller and the views. It's not a domain model because, hey, this model here has nothing to do with the business of an e-commerce application. It's just a supporting model that we need to use or we can use. We don't need necessarily, we could have used just the properties there, but we can create and we can use to facilitate our communication between controller and views. Again, the name of that, it's not a technical keyword, but we call that a view model. It's a model used to transport information between controllers and views. Okay? Make sense? Does it make sense? And again, this can become more complicated. I just wanted to show this way because you saw how it could be done without, and now you see how it can be done with a model. You can pass the parameters directly without the model, or now with a model attached to it. Okay? Again, if we run, it will work the same way. Okay. Let's see here. What we're gonna do next. Okay, so we create our login model. Login model, we did that. Okay, so we're gonna jump and you're gonna practice this a little bit. Let me see what is the best moment to do that. Okay, let's do this now, and then after that we can go for a break. This is the last part of the chapter, of this part that we are doing. In this part, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating. We did the logout. Sorry. We actually, you know what? Let me do. Yeah, we did the login. What you're going to be doing, you're going to be doing the logout. Okay? So I'm going to open up a few files on the Centennial. Oh, we have a question there. Okay. Okay, so let me address those questions. Sorry, I did not see that before. Let's see here. As I said, today I'm lost. Okay. Can you post the sample code? Yes. So I'll be sharing that in a second, okay? What is the difference between, I forgot to mention that, that's a good point, that's a great point. Let me go back there. Okay. So, you have view result here, and here we are using something different, something new, called iAction result. Why is that? Well, first of all is that view result, if we say that an action returns a view result, it can only return a view. It cannot return a redirect. Okay? So that's the first thing. A view result can only return one of the views that you have created here in your application. View result only returns views. iAction results, it can return a view, but it can also return a redirect. In our case, the reason why I'm using an iAction results is because iAction results can be a view and can be a redirect. Actually, view results inherits from iAction results. So in a way, iAction result is more generic than a view result. Because again, iAction result can be actually, let me scroll down. iAction result can be a redirect to another location, or it can be a view. So again, the reason why we made this an iAction result is because of this. If this is not valid, it keeps in the same view, so I call the login again by doing this. But if we are able to log in, then we go back to where we wanted to be. We wanted to be under this order list. So again, that's the difference. That's usually HTTP posts, they should be iAction results, because usually there are two possible outcomes from a post. Either the validation didn't work and you have to stay in the same view, so you have to return a view, or the validation worked and you might be moved to another location via a redirect or something like a redirect to action. So again, that's the difference. Yes?
I think just what they said is actually the difference between an iAction result and an action result, not a view result.
Well, the action results is actually just a more specific. So the iAction result is the interface. The action result is just one more. It's just a concrete class that inherits from action result. I think that here, to be quite honest, this could be action result as well, because action results can also be a redirect and view to. So the difference is that action results is the concrete version of the interface here. Again, you see that a lot of times we have an IEnumerable and we have a list. IEnumerable is the interface that has a lot of children. And again, action result is just one more child of this interface, okay? And I'm quite sure that action results, we could have used action result here, and it would have worked, I'm quite sure, that the same way, because I think that view results, it also inherits from action result, not only from iAction, but from action result as well. Again, we can examine the inheritance of this guy here, but I'm quite sure that this is it. Again, if you have follow-ups, that's fine, but that's what I have to say about that one. Why do we have to pass the view model instead of the actual model? Well, that's what I'm saying. View model is just a name for another type of model. Why do we have to pass the view model instead of... Actually, we are passing an actual model. It's just that this type of model that we are using, we call that a view model. If you look at the codes, there is nowhere in our codes that we used a keyword called view model. View model is just, it's just a different category. It's just a different name that we attribute, but we are actually sending a model. In the end, this thing here, this is a model. It's just that we call it a view model instead of a domain model, but it's still a regular model, okay? So again, I'm not sure if it makes sense. If you have a follow-up there, let me know. But why do we have to pass the view model instead of? Yeah, it's, again, it is an actual model. We just use a different terminology there. We call that a view model because it's not a domain model like products, order, okay? Okay. Okay, so actually let's do this. Yeah, we have to do the delete, we have to do the logout. Okay, so I would like to switch a few things here. Let's go to our 10 minutes. Once we come back, we're going to progress in some other things, and then we come back to this one here. Let's try this way. So let's go for 10 minutes, and once we're back, we'll get some stuff done here about the projects and about some other stuff too. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.